Hi, hope everyone's having a fantastic Thursday. I'm here in London and I am waiting to chat to Jennifer Johnston today. She's a mezzo soprano who I first met when she sang with the LSO in an amazing version of Oedipus Rex by Stravinsky. I was about to say something else. So I'm hoping that we've got Jen here. Hi,
Hello.
great, lovely to
Just trying
see
to
you.
stabilize the camera.
Ah, yeah, I totally understand. I was just giving you a little intro, and as I was letting you in, I couldn't remember. I almost said Rake's Progress, and obviously I was saying Oedipus Rex. That's when we first met when you sang with the LSO, which was so fantastic. Amazing role, amazing voice, and at least we got to know each other. And so, how have you been doing through this whole time in lockdown?
It's not been easy for anybody. I mean, I don't think anybody's come out of it feeling like they've had a great time. I am lucky that I managed to get home from Sweden. I was working in Malmo, and the morning after the concert that I was having, which weirdly was Oedipus Rex, just to say, um, I we'd done a socially distanced concert anyway because Malmo, obviously North Sweden, had decided to accord to their government regulations. So we had an audience about 200 spread out, and I got up in the morning to come home, and suddenly Denmark announced they were shutting their borders that day. So I was on the second to last flight that left Denmark. I
Goodness.
made it home literally by the skin of my teeth. So was really grateful because I don't quite know how it would. Well, we had plans. I was going to get a ferry, or I'd like have to charter a boat or something to get home. Thankfully, that didn't happen. But lockdown itself, I've just tried to keep busy. Really,
Because
it's
you started out with this great notes from Musician's Kitchen, and that was very early on. So, what was your sort of inspiration for doing that?
well. I don't know about anyone else. I'm just going to it's annoying me that I can't see my face. It's a bit weird. I've got my camera balanced on a load of
Oh,
books.
yeah,
It's
yoga.
so sophisticated. Um, the the thing is about ideas, they come out of nowhere sometimes. And I live in Liverpool in a very quiet part near the beach in North Liverpool. And during lockdown, the amount of noise the birds have made, the dawn chorus, has been overwhelming. So yeah, it's very good. I woke up one morning at 4:30 because they were so loud, and the whole idea for Notes from Musicians' Kitchens popped into my head, ready formed with the name.
Really?
So
That's
I was like, I think I need to do that. And the idea was to unite the musical community worldwide, whilst also raising money for Help Musicians UK, by creating an online recipe resource and mixology resource, contributed to by people from all over the world. So I thought, okay, I'll start a Facebook group. Let's see how this goes. And literally within 48 hours, there were 800 members of the group. And
it
people were
took off like that.
firing recipes at me, including yourself. And I found that not only was it brilliant in terms of giving people something to think about, other than the fact that they were stuck at home, not being able to work, etc. Suddenly, friendships started to appear. And you'd have one person in Norway trying an Australian recipe, and they'd be like having a conversation on this Facebook page, which I know you yourself saw. And I thought, how brilliant. That's kind of what I was aiming for, really. I hadn't thought about it beyond that. But it became clear that it was going to be a big deal. And so we have a fabulous website that's been designed by Madeline Pirard. And that's subscription only, £10 one-off fee. And very soon, all the subscriptions are sort of mounting up too. So, I mean, I'm really pleased with how it's gone. It's been a lovely thing to keep me motivated.
Yeah,
And
you should
all
be.
the,
That's such a fantastic, to have made money for Help Musicians, because I think we all felt a little bit, we all saw our work fall away, and it was very depressing. But for some people, it's a real absolute, they're a real problem that people can't pay their bills, you know, their rents and things. And I think we all, you know, coming out of this, you know, this absolute shock and horror, you managed to have something which united people. We raised, you know, each person, you know, paid £10. You know, we could, you know, afford to do that, and just sharing the recipes and kind of sparking conversations through it. I think it just had it did really have a lovely community feel, and help musicians must have been so grateful that you sort
Well,
of that.
they were overwhelmed, and so I didn't talk to them because I just thought they don't need to know that they're going to get extra money. They'll be just happy to have it. But they found out about it and sent me the most lovely email. So they were delighted, because what became clear very rapidly is how many people in the musical community require help, and how many have fallen between the stools of all the different schemes that the government have set up. In fact, 40% of musicians have not had any assistance at all financially. So suddenly help musicians were having to cope with a vast number of people, and they rapidly ran out of money. And so the important thing for all of us to remember is that the crisis isn't over at the moment. So anything we can do to promote the community's needs, and put them above maybe other sectors' needs as well, is all to the good. And so yes, it was a good thing to be focusing on, I think.
Did you try out any of the recipes yourself?
Yeah, I've tried quite a lot. I've tried your cheese bread. I did actually mean to send you a photo of it, but I think it got eaten too quickly.
I actually have one in the oven.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Your quackly cheese bread.
Cheese bread. It's a kind of, if anyone, you know, wants to know, it's just because I don't eat carbs, so it's a way to make a kind of bread out of broccoli and almond flour and stuff. But it's a very super simple recipe, because I know, you know, chef, there were some incredible recipes that were there, and I was like,
really?
wow, that's pretty impressive.
We've had some unbelievable things. I mean, I have several favourites, but they're not for the reasons you'd think. I mean, Stephen Huff's porridge recipe with Smarties, I love, because it's just perfect. And in particular for a non-cook as well, that's a great thing. And then Tom Hickox, who of course is the son of Richard Hickox, the conductor, he submitted a recipe for his John Cage boiled egg. And it has to stay in the water for 4 minutes 33 seconds. So it's properly genius. I mean, it really made me laugh when it came through. And then Nimrod Borenstein, the composer, produced a recipe for a savoury strawberry risotto.
Yes, that was quite recent, wasn't it?
It's quite recent. That's one I haven't yet. I'm determined to test it out, because he tells me it's delicious.
Okay.
And he's a really keen cook, so I trust him, and I just need to get on with trying that one. But so there's been there's some interesting things, and it goes to show how sort of diverse our food cultures are globally. And it's a lovely thing also to think that we might introduce somebody to food types that they've never even attempted before.
And also a sort of commonish theme was a bit like, you know, we musicians don't have a lot of time sometimes or you're only working with what you've got, or limited facilities in an Airbnb because you're on tour. So I was interested to see like what people did with just pretty basic ingredients.
Yeah, with one pan, and one fairly blunt knife, and one ring. You know, the great thing is that eating well shouldn't firstly cost the earth, and really it shouldn't be that hard. And so it's been an interesting thing also to see what people actually enjoy to eat, and in some ways how important comfort food is, particularly in a time where anxiety levels are very high. A lot of people have reverted back to the sort of food that their grandmother made them, and also because there's a memory attached to that. And the great thing is when you read the descriptions above all the recipes, there's a lot of really heartfelt stories that attach to those things, because food means memory, it means community, it means home, and actually means love for most people. So the sort of human stories that have emerged are fantastic too.
And what's next for the website? Are you going to try and expand it in some way?
It's not the website itself is unlikely to expand much further than it is currently. However, it's now in the hands of publishing agents and publishers, hopefully, to become a physical cookbook. I think I exhausted the supply of willing musicians with ready recipes that could be publishable. And I actually, with 120 recipes, I felt, you know, there's 30 countries represented there. That's a pretty good resource. Not all recipes may end up in the eventual hardback cookbook because that would make it enormous.
Yeah.
But certainly there's enough to make a really brilliant cookbook with that. And so in reality, I think it's sort of on the home stretch, if you like.
Yeah, well,
and that's lovely too.
Yeah, so we must all keep our eyes out on, you know, for when the book can actually be a physical.
It'll be a while, I think, but
I know,
yeah.
but I'm still excited about it.
I know, there's lots of excitement, and which is lovely, but publishing and publishers do not work at the same speed as musicians, I found.
You know, things just need to be...
Yeah, I just got to let that tick over, I think.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So kept you obviously really busy for some time. What else do you, of course, obviously it must have been really sad to see so many of your concerts just fall away. Was there anything that you were really looking forward to doing or going to?
Yeah, two things really I was really upset about. One was losing the concerts with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, who are my home orchestra, but also I'm their artist in residence until Christmas. Well, the majority of my residency has fallen away because we quite simply couldn't do Mahler 3 or Beethoven 9 or Verdi Requiem, whatever. So it that made me sad. They are such a lovely orchestra to work with. A lot of them are my friends, and in some ways being at home during a period where I was supposed to be doing those and not doing them was really odd. But then also it was really hard, firstly not going back to Munich, which is my sort of opera home in many respects. But then I was supposed to be making my Glyndebourne debut as Barbara the Turk in Rake's Progress, of all things, since you mentioned it already.
I've done
it just didn't happen. So there are things sometimes, and you have to let go of things sometimes, but there are things that really lodge in you. And I think for any British singer, singing at Glyndebourne is a fairly important thing.
Yeah,
and I was so excited also to be in the UK for once in opera. Is amazing. And you know, a lot of my friends were also going to be working at the festival this summer. And we both know Karen Cargill well, for instance, and although Karen wasn't in my production, it was lovely, the thought that, you know, our children might be able to see each other for a bit, and it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, and especially with opera, I think things are planned so far in advance, aren't they? Like production put together, singers put together. So to have had that sort of on the horizon and the expectation, and to see it fall away and just fingers crossed, just postponed, is... We
don't know yet. I mean, the trouble is that because the government haven't yet firmed up their views about how safe it is to sing, en masse in particular, and whether they will allow audiences in buildings at any point before social distancing isn't required anymore. We're very much in limbo, and the opera houses are too, because they can't really plan ahead until they've got a firm idea of the sort of the scope of what they'll be permitted to do. And so at the moment it's more about looking elsewhere and coming up with new plans and being creative and looking to the future, really.
Yeah. And how have you felt? Because when I chatted to Karen, she, you know, she's such an upbeat person, very positive, amazing energy. And she had said that she had felt so kind of depressed about the situation that she didn't sing for a long time. How did you feel like singing at home, or just did you think actually now it's time to just have a break?
We're very good friends, but we're quite different characters. And I had also been asked to do Self-Isolation Choir's Messiah, which I had to record from home. And then I was also asked to do a private gig, and I started life as a jazz singer, really, when I was at university. And my jazz partner, David Buckley, is now a Hollywood film composer. And so I said to him, he's up in the mountains in Andorra currently. But, you know, I was like, come on, can you just do me an arrangement of something so that I at least feel like I'm giving something to people if they're paying me in particular. So he rearranged Every Time We Say Goodbye, you know, the Ella Fitzgerald classic. And I sort of then, once that gig was over, I put that on social media. And then I got all of these people saying, oh, that'd be really brilliant. Can you do this for somebody's birthday? Or can you like, you know, like record, I love that song. And so I started to do what I called songs from home, which some of which are on YouTube now. But I just, for the most part, did those because the act of physically singing was something I was missing. But I didn't have any appetite really for classical music. And although I recorded The Messiah, because that was a professional contract, it felt different anyway. But voluntarily singing something when we were all in the position that we were was quite tough. I found it really difficult to even have a look at scores, or I didn't want to. So in that sense, Karen and I were similar, because I think when it's something you do as a job and therefore is so integral in your life, to then have it all wrenched away the way it happened took some time to get your head around. And then, of course, there was almost like a grieving process, really. And that grieving process, everybody's different. And so we've all reacted differently to it. I'm a doer. So for me, having Notes from Musicians' Kitchens and the podcast associated with it has meant that by doing that, it's like a focus away from my own feelings about how I'm dealing with this period.
I think that's right. I think I'm similar to that as well. I channeled so much energy into just other projects, even starting these series of chats with people, because I really wanted to see how people dealt with suddenly this expanse of time, coupled with worrying about the future or even just the present. You know, suddenly your income is cut away, you know, nobody's really paying for any digital content and all that. So I was very much also the same, where I just wanted to be doing things. So I wasn't sitting around all day just going, I miss playing Mahler, you know. I know.
Yeah, it's hard.
You know, and you sort of think, oh, I was so looking forward to Mahler 2 at the Proms, you know, one of my favourite pieces.
Sure, it's amazing.
and then, of course, you know, it's not going to happen, and everything is suddenly very small scale. But I think it is a really good way of trying to, you know, I personally think, I hope in a way that in the last 4 months I've almost sort of grown as a person, and maybe you feel the same way. Suddenly you've just had to be completely pushed out of your comfort zone, do a few totally different things that you might not have.
Well, be on camera really for one thing. I mean, most of us are not natural camera, like TV people. In fact, I sang at the first night of the Proms last year, and that's something that I'm also going to miss this summer, frankly. It was very odd because it was on telly, as it always is with first night, and I think that most singers would rather the cameras not be there somehow. Okay. It's a strange thing. Very few of us are very confident. Okay. And suddenly, if we do anything, we're on camera. So it's become this weird thing. I mean, some people have got a sort of problem with it in their heads. They're brilliant at it, but they don't believe they are. So, and I suppose I'm a little bit like that. I'd rather be on radio, I think.
Okay, it's interesting, because I would have thought, singers would be more used to this kind of engagement because you don't have an instrument to hide behind. Whereas obviously I'm now used to doing these lives, it's fine. But most of the time, if there's a camera involved with what I do, whether it's, you know, chamber music or with the full orchestra, you think that's fine, got my violin, you know, here I am, it's fine, focus in. But to actually, I always think with singers, wow, you know, you're presenting yourself. There's no visible thing to sort of hide behind. So I find that really interesting that you know, a lot of the singers feel a little bit.
Well, I think it's because when you perform as a singer, yes, you're facing the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the whites of people's eyes occasionally if you're in. I mean, I find LSO St Luke's quite intimidating because of that, because everybody is so close to you,
Okay.
you know, and they rise up in front of you. But the difference is that, particularly in an opera theatre, so let's say Munich, the Bayerische Staatsoper, the National Theatre is huge and the pit is huge. And in fact, in that sense, we don't even really see people, but also on camera, I can see myself right now. And that's disconcerting, because normally our job, we feel, is to communicate out to people. But if I'm looking at myself on a screen, I feel very awkward. And so it is a different thing. And I think for somebody like me, and I'm sure most singers really, we thrive on the live audience feel. And you know yourself when an audience is loving something. Sometimes they don't love it, and then you have to just carry on anyway. But you know that atmosphere and the field of electricity that you can get, particularly when the show goes really well, is something that can't be replicated on a screen. And you can't even really feel that if somebody's videoed, let's say one of the Royal Opera's performances, if you watch that on a TV, even then, even though there was a live audience, you still don't quite get the atmosphere. And so it's a very different experience from the job that we do daily, I guess.
There's sort of charge in the air, an electricity that where you feel that the audience is totally with you, or not, depending, but
sometimes really not.
I imagine it's like, you know, stand-up comedy where, you know, you say something and it's just like tumbleweeds kind of, or, you know, suddenly you don't feel, you feel like you're flying, everything is going really well. But yeah, that is something that I think we're all really missing, just the human engagement of,
and also it's not just the connection by itself. I think for us performers, it's also the exhilaration of getting to the end of an amazing show, and not just hearing the applause, but feeling the adrenaline of having had a show go really brilliantly. It isn't able to happen sitting in my studio at home, basically. That's where I am now. But that's not to say there haven't been silver linings. I mean, there have been a number, really. One of which is that I spend my life traveling all the time, and suddenly to be at home all the time. I only moved house in September, and it's a house that needs a lot of work doing to it. I would never have had the opportunity to live here the way I have over the past months, to think about what I might do with it once I start earning money again, etc. So there's that. I mean, I've got a 12-year-old daughter as well who's loved having me at home. And so
I bet,
in that sense, I can't regret that at all. She's really coped very well with it all. She's coped brilliantly with homeschooling and all that. I've coped less well with homeschooling. The first lesson she had, her school have digitally schooled her fully, so that's been brilliant. But she did need some help at the beginning, particularly to learn how to use all the different platforms. And the first lesson was Mandarin Chinese, which I had no idea about, not a clue. I think I can say hello in Mandarin, but we got through it all, and so, you know, she finishes tomorrow, so she's excited about the summer.
Their term. School's out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because I think for a lot of people, not only is suddenly your normal life stripped away, it's the adding suddenly your teacher and
a hotelier
would never have thought that you had to actually do. I'm so in awe of people that have managed to do that.
The things that I think have annoyed me the most, though, are quite basic. I never would have expected that I would resent having to empty and load the dishwasher as many times as I have. You know, but it's amazing what's made me cross. It's really funny. I think also being the only adult in the house and being the only person cooking all the meals has also been quite wearing. So I'm quite glad that restaurants and cafes are starting to begin to open up, because just being able to go out just occasionally and go and have somebody cook something for me is a help. Yes. We're very lucky also where we live, because I live very close to the beach. In fact, my parents' house is on the beach. And when I was buying a house, I thought, you know, I really don't want to be right next to it. Where we live, the weather in the winter is horrendous, and the houses get completely hammered. So my house sits a few roads back from the sea itself, but it means that it's a very easy walk to the beach. And you know, when you're in the middle of a lockdown situation, a lot of people were struggling, being sort of trapped. Well, we were lucky because we could see the horizon every day, and that's a big help. So
Yeah.
I think also we were very fortunate, weren't we, with the weather? So it meant that going to the beach and having a walk on the pretty empty beach, actually, most of the time, was a huge help. So as I say, there's definitely been advantages to some of it.
Yeah, I think with musicians, because we spend so much time traveling and on tour, I mean, I've never been at home like this, you know, since I started in an orchestra. Of course, I would have been in Aix-en-Provence actually doing operas now for 5 weeks. So I do feel very sad about that because it's a place that I've spent
I love
so
it
many.
there.
Yeah, it's just, you know exactly where the
I mean,
restaurants go to,
oh,
the
I love
owners
the
of.
Japanese restaurant there in particular.
Oh, I go to Koi. I don't know because it's got
Yeah,
really air conditioning.
yeah,
It's
that.
so hot. And so when we go back after a year, they go, "You were here last year," and obviously now they know because they recognise that you're part of the festival, and it's lovely. Then you feel like you have this great connection with people, and there were people on the actually I got these earrings in the night market, and they always message me going, "We miss you, like coming this year." I thought, I bet you will. But it is just, I have to look at it in a positive way and think I do love being at home, and so it is a treat in a way to know that I'm, you know, I did buy a suit. I had to buy a new suitcase in November, which hasn't been used because it was the biggest size for a big trip, and I thought, well, that was a bit of a waste of time. But to actually have time, I think, to just have time to relax and discover your local area.
Well, I mean, some of your photos are amazing. The herons in the Barbican, you
Yeah,
know, amazing.
I mean, I'm almost ashamed because I've been a Barbican resident for, gosh, almost 20 years, almost as long as I've been in the orchestra, and there were places I had not actually walked to on the Barbican estate where residents can go with a key. You know, it's been amazing, and every day I go around checking on the ducklings. And yeah, the heron does come along every so often. We have to kind of keep our eye on him so he's not.
You have to be a bit careful with them. I mean, when I was growing up, I mean, clearly I live in, it's not exactly a rural area, but we're right on the edge of the countryside. It's the last postcode of Liverpool. So quite a lot of nature around, to put it that way. And my parents' house is sandwiched between the beach and a nature reserve. In fact, they've got pheasants living in their garden at the moment for some inexplicable reason. Some family of pheasants have decided they quite like it. Herons are lethal. And my parents have friends who had a couple of roads back from their house, built a beautiful pond with a bridge over it, and they'd spent a fortune on koi carp. And they put in anti-heron nets, and the next morning they woke up and the heron had dived so hard through the nets, it got through the nets and ate all the carp. So you've got, you know, you have to laugh in a way.
We're always looking. I don't think the one at the Barbican Lake is very adept because he's always just sort of, I think he's a bit slow or something, but fortunately, I mean, there seems to be plenty of carp. I've been feeding the fish, but what I didn't want was him to take any of the baby.
Oh, no.
So I kept checking and feeding them. So, but it is, you feel very lucky when you have access to outside space and a quiet place to be. And I think the weather should start improving again.
And I hope so.
I know. So you have another project that you've got that's starting. Do you want to tell us a bit about that? It's got something to do.
Well, this is another one of these things that, you know, something pops in your head. Our big problem collectively is that a lot of people are sat at home, and it's partly because you might have tried to get a job even, but there just aren't any really. And those that come up, hundreds of people apply for a single position. So there's a lot of musicians who are not just in need, but also properly missing performing. And also I love the proms and have appeared at the proms a number of times, and it was sad to hear the proms announcement that for the most part it was going to be archival and only 2 weeks of live concerts. And I thought, gosh, maybe we could do a mini version. So I've set up something called Bitesize Proms, which is going to be every day for 8 weeks on Instagram. There'll be one prom a day, and by a prom we mean a bite, which is going to be a video of less than 15 minutes length, one piece performed by a classical musician. And then twice a week we're going to have a young artist platform as well.
Great.
And then on the website, which I hope will go live in the next couple of days, we've had a few teething problems with it, I'm going to do a bite-sized classical podcast which will relate to whatever's going on with the individual videos, which will include some questions and answers with big name musicians. And then we're going to have some curated Spotify playlists so that people who are young or not young even, who don't know very much about classical music, can perhaps learn to love it.
Yeah.
So it's got a number of sort of aims and ideals, one of which is it's all for Help Musicians UK. So we're going to be asking for money repeatedly, and I think people should understand that from the outset.
Yeah.
Second thing is to give a platform to demonstrate for us collectively, even to the government, to say, look how great we are, that we can produce from nowhere these amazing short performances. This is the strength and depth of talent that we have. And thirdly, it is really important to develop new audiences. And our generation, we digest content very differently to the generation that's coming through now. They are used to YouTube, they're used to, bite-sized bits. Yeah. And so I'm going to give them it on a plate and hope that for some people it sticks and they think, gosh, I wonder what else is out there. So it's become very big very rapidly. It's only been going a few days and already I've been overwhelmed, not just by the amazing musicians who will be appearing, massive world names, some opera houses, some organisations. It is extraordinary. I'm not going to tell anyone yet, except to say that the first one is with Evelyn Glennie, who is the president of Help Musicians UK. So she's the first person that you will see.
Oh, fantastic.
And then the rest of it is yet to be revealed, but really exciting. And the other great thing is that starting to see a few collaborations, and that's really lovely too. So there may be some unexpected collaborations, and that's brilliant. So yes, watch this space.
That sounds amazing, because as you say, with the generation now, we know that people have fairly short attention spans. It's different, but what you're doing is not dumbing down content. That's
no,
you're presenting it in a palatable way. In
a palatable way that also is not scary. Mm-hmm. So it's not like expecting somebody who's never heard a symphony before to come and sit through Mahler 8, which I think would do anybody in, frankly, if they'd never heard anything like it before. I mean, it would just be so overwhelming. I don't know that they'd cope very well, really.
No.
That thing about also saying to a musician of all ages, actually, that the young ones as much as the established ones, you have to do one single piece. And they've all gone, oh my God, that's so cool, because I can choose my favourite thing.
Yeah.
And what's brilliant is some of the choices being made, they would never be able to program things in another context. Perhaps something doesn't even fit into a recital program or whatever. And then the next questions for them is, I wonder whether I like being on video, which I've had a few quite amusing conversations. But for the most part, people are just thrilled to have a deadline and to have something to give, also in the knowledge that it hopefully will do some good collectively. So yeah, it's been a very busy, very surprising. It's only been going for 4 days, so a bit overwhelmed, but I'm working through it all, and I've got a great team behind me as well.
Yeah, so that's Bitesize Proms, and we can find that on on all
across all channels is at Bitesize Proms, but there will also be a website once it's up and running, which will
great. Yeah, I
proms.com.
think the idea of putting something out there in, you know, we're all going to miss, it will feel very weird have a summer literally without every day knowing, you know, it's just so, the proms has just grown into this huge institution, hasn't it? And we're, you know, there's also like late night proms and kids proms and things like that.
And the amazing thing about the proms is just the incredible showcase it offers, not just for British musicians either. It's such an important thing worldwide. And I don't think we yet know how we feel about the fact it's not happening this year. It's just such a strange thing. It's such an important part of our musical year. And so part of what we're doing is also we'll celebrate the proms. In fact, one of the things I'm going to do a question and answer with Evelyn Glennion, because she was the first female percussionist. In fact, she might have been the first percussionist ever to appear at the last night of the proms, solo percussionist. Is to talk about how it feels to be involved in that and what amazing experience it is. I mean, the last night is amazing anyway, because we all see it on telly, but being involved even in the first night was amazing, and it was just really exciting, and the atmosphere was electric, and walking out onto the platform in a full Albert Hall where the prommers are right up to the rail, there is literally nothing like it. So I'm pleased to be able to also acknowledge that we're going to miss that, and we can't fulfill anything to replace it. The idea is that it should be like mini proms in your pocket on your mobile.
Yeah, and and people can spare 15 minutes a day to just enjoy some music making, and especially for young people to try and, you know, engage in some way, because, you know, every day it might not be your cup of tea, as is the usual proms. You know, there's always the great excitement.
But you can try. If you can spare 10 minutes, which is not all of the videos will be up to 15 minutes. Not every piece is that length. So if you can spend even 3 minutes, just have a look on Instagram. It'll all be on IGTV, which is a brilliant platform because it's highly accessible, but it also can access a youth market, a youth group that most other platforms couldn't achieve. So very grateful it exists.
Oh yeah, and remind us, what date does that start? What date?
Starts a week on Friday, so it mirrors the proms in terms of dates. So the 12th of July, the 17th of July to the 12th of September.
Wow. Okay, that's fantastic. We've got to look at that, everyone on social media.
Yeah, just follow us.
If there's any questions, do pop them into the comments, whether it's about Jen's life as a famous mezzo soprano traveling around the world, or about this Bitesize Proms initiative, which I think is going to create a huge kind of splash.
Well, and if anyone wants to potentially consider sponsoring or advertising, then it's really important that they get in touch. We also want to support the wider community, and of course that community doesn't just include musicians. It includes all the companies and all of the tech side, and all of the industry is enormous in number. People don't understand that. They think that we are, you know, little and that we're quite niche, and I think people would be very shocked if they realise just how many people are involved in the infrastructure of classical music in the UK.
It's not just what you see at that moment on site at all.
And I think the other thing which is brilliant is the fact that it's very rare that you can get as up close and personal to some of these amazing musicians as you will be able to on our platform, and to see from a personal level, not just their choice of repertoire, but it's just these little miniatures, like I love dolls' houses, so the miniaturist idea is something that really appeals. And so yeah, it's a hopefully an innovative and exciting way to move forwards.
Yeah, because I think we've all been putting out, obviously we think about what's happened since March. There's been a lot of great digital content out there, and this is a really good way of, you know, and nobody ever wanted to talk about, in a way, monetizing it. But the reality is the people who are making this content were just, you know, have basically not been employed, have no form of income. And it was just a bit of an elephant in the room, really. Whereas because there was so much content coming, then it got to a point where it's like, well, can people really charge for it now? But essentially, we really need to, because, you know,
we need to. But also in this instance, what was hard, and we looked at various funding sort of ideas, fundraising ideas. We came to the conclusion that with something like this, it was just really important just to say to people, please give us your money, and do that repeatedly. It's quite difficult to ask people to access small things and pay for just that one thing, or even to pay for a week of content. We'd rather that if somebody can only afford £10, that they give us that £10 regardless. And we're just going to keep going on and on until people give us their money, basically. Because I think that the point is that people are all giving everything for free on this platform. No one's being paid to be involved. And yet they're doing it at their normal professional level. And hopefully people watching that will begin to appreciate that there's some real effort gone into this, but also these are people that still have to put food on the table. But also help musicians are doing that for those that really need it the most. The job they are doing is extraordinary. And we all feel that we want to support them as a charity too for that reason, because they are ensuring that some really important people are not going to leave the profession because they can't afford to stay. So there's a sort of payoff there. I mean, you know, it's the difficult thing about content is that all of the big organizations have given away a lot for free. We're frightened clearly that people won't want to pay for it anymore. But we hope that presenting stuff in this way, there's no massive burden on one person. It's spread across the community, and it's an entirely voluntary thing. I haven't got a gun to anyone's head going, you have to do this.
you have to be
So
tough.
yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, it's been tough, isn't it? Because of course we all flooded social media with content, you know, big organizations and small, because nobody wanted to get lost. I think, you know, suddenly, you know, concert seasons have gone and it's like, quick, we need to stay visible in some way. And that's all very well and good. And there's been, I have to say, incredible leaps and bounds in technology that has happened. And again, and what I love about this idea of your bite-sized proms are that, you know, people will be able to see, you know, world-class playing, but also get a chance to engage with it, which you would never get the chance to do. I mean, not saying anything wrong with the proms, but you could be, you know, sitting in row whatever and 7,000 people think, I think that person's amazing and bravo. But this way there will be, I imagine, some way of engaging. Probably that person will, you know, be able to do a talk with you.
Absolutely. We're having to play that a little bit by ear, because I think it's difficult to predict what the audience themselves will want, but the idea is that if there's enough interest in it, we could do live Q&As on Instagram as well. So that's in our planning. It's just, I think we need to see how it goes. For the most part, you see, the videos will be pre-recorded, and that's great because it gives everybody the security of knowing that their best is what's going to go out there. Hilariously though, there's quite a lot of competition going on. So there'll be good quality coming out because no one wants to be the one that looks a bit rubbish, you know. So everybody's doing a pretty proper job, you know. It's brilliant, and I'm very proud of them all, because it would be very easy to sit at home and say, I'm not doing anything, I don't want to help. You know, then we've had a few people who said no for various personal reasons, and that's completely understandable. But nobody has said, I'm not doing it because I'm not willing to raise money for a really important charity in our community, and I'm not doing it because I don't want to, if I'm not being paid, I don't want to spend that time. So it's a lovely thing, frankly.
That sounds like it's going to be absolutely amazing.
We'll see. Let's not build it up too much.
You know, we've got to check out all the bite-sized proms, you know, hashtags and look on.
Yeah, we might even have merchandise.
Oh yeah. For when you go to the Super Bowl.
Maybe. The other thing to say is that you know, it's 8 weeks, so that's a long haul, so plenty can be added at that point. We're just going to I suppose it's about testing the water in a way. We know what we're doing is good, and we know that everybody's excited about it. But there may be other things that strike us in the time with me and my team that we think, okay, we'll see what happens. There's 5 of us working on it. So.
Yeah, the same with any kind of new initiative, isn't it? It's sort of new things come along, or you have some ideas don't work, and then
and you have to be open to the fact that it might not be what you think it's going to be. But because of the way life's been recently, it's been so crazy and so different to what any of us would have expected. I think we're ready for that, because that's how life has been as a whole. So now is the time, I feel, to push those boundaries and to discover new ways of not just harnessing the technology itself, but also reaching out to a different generation. And it's a very crowded marketplace for music. You know, you look at the streaming services, how many millions upon millions of tracks are available to listen to. We've got to find a way of bringing in a new generation, and one, unfortunately, in the UK, who haven't necessarily had music education at school. So you have to present it in a way that's a little bit cool, not sort of fusty, dusty, and has a relevance, even if it's Bach or Mozart or Beethoven that you're presenting. There is still a relevance, we believe, but we have to convince a younger audience of that relevance, I think.
That's what's really tricky, isn't it? Because the reputation of classical music has always been, for a long time, very, you know, just a kind of stolid, old-fashioned, not for me, it's the sort of thing my grandparents like, kind of thing. And obviously, it's hard. Every generation probably tries to draw in more young people to music, and it's just a way. We've reached a point in our life where, you know, digital engagement is so much easier to be able to get hold of these young players, whether they end up hopefully learning instruments. I mean, this is something that, you know, desperately want young people learning instruments at school level, or at least that they take something away from music that they love and they become great music lovers. And I mean, I would love it if all young kids could learn an instrument, or learn all instruments. I would love to have tried every instrument, because I always think to myself, I could have been some great trombone virtuoso if only I'd have tried an instrument. You know, there must be so much talent out there that is untapped. But, you know, with pressures of, oh no, classical music is boring, and
it's not cool.
Yeah, it's sort of, you know, it's just for, I remember I took part in some kind of survey, which, you know, people had to give their first word, the first word they thought of when you say classical music, and sort of stuffy came up quite a lot, that sort of thing. And obviously we don't think so. And I think it's the positive engagement we can have with, say, Bitesize Proms. You know, people might not want to go and sit in the album for 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
No, and I don't know that they also want to pay for it. And the trouble is that I mean, classical music isn't anything like as expensive as people presume. I think there's a lot of assumption about it, which is hard to overcome, frankly. It's difficult to say to people, well, do you know you can go and watch an opera at the Royal Opera House for £5? They sort of don't really believe you. I think they think I'm joking. And then, you know, you have to pay. I mean, even in the Gods at the Proms, it's still not cheap. Is, you know, you do have to pay for it. The trouble is that young people are so used to now streaming everything for free. They don't see the hidden costs in any of that. We also pay a penalty because we don't get the royalties that we would have if they bought music the way they used to. There's an issue about that, which as a profession we're going to have to tackle at some point. But I think if you expect too much of people as well too quickly, that's also hard. So I feel a little bit like Bitesize Proms is a gateway, and it's like a daily drip, for want of a better expression. But it's just enough to engage, and because it'll be so varied across ensembles and singers and musicians, across instruments, age ranges, experience, I mean, some of the young artists we've got are really exciting. And that really gives me great pleasure, because then young people are going to see somebody of their own age group performing. That was a very important part of it for me. It might be, we've said at the moment 2 young artist platforms a week. It could expand because we've had so much interest. So we're just having to sort of stand back a little bit. And say, okay, how can we cope with the sheer numbers of people that want to be involved? And I also, the likelihood is that it will become Bitesize Classical in September after this is over. And I'm then going to look at ways to continue it beyond the proms, because it I think is a valid thing to say as a profession. We have to do stuff ourselves to bring in new audiences, and that burden or joy, depending on how you look at it, is going to carry on regardless. So this situation we're in right now is not going to end soon unless there's a vaccine or a treatment drug. The position we're in now is a difficult one, and it is going to continue for quite a while. So we have to embrace not just all the new technology, but we also have to accept the status quo, really, and to use that as best we can to not also get left behind in this massive market for music.
And I think also, even on a more positive spin on it, I think I would, even if everything returned to absolute normality in a short amount of time, I would be so happy to still see this kind of content online, because there are people who will never be able to go to, they're going to be too remote. And young kids, we do a lot of education concerts in the LSO, so every month you have thousands of school kids coming by coach to the Barbican. Of course, we can't reach every school. This is only accessible for ones that are kind of local. How great to still be able to produce projects like this, even once stuff is back to normal, so that you can reach those pockets of communities which just won't have access to hearing great.
And that's the thought behind the Bitesize Classical podcast. So each episode will only be 15 minutes maximum, and each one will be concentrating on one thing. So it will be a one-stop shop for learning briefly, let's say Beethoven. It'll be a 15-minute nutshell about who he was, a bit of humour, because there are some quite funny stories that come out of composers' lives, and then direction to a curated playlist which has the sort of best of, which has been curated by a well-known musician who performs that repertoire. The idea is therefore to not to spoon feed, but to make it easy for people to find out more, and that is very much aimed at a younger audience specifically. We know that the majority of people who are classical music fans do not need to listen to a podcast about Beethoven. So that's going to be there to just support those who perhaps have questions even or are scared to ask questions, because we find that a lot doing educational projects. I'm sure you're the same, that people are worried about asking questions in case they look stupid. So they don't then get over their fear. So this is a sort of way of breaking down a barrier that we know is there, and in a hands-off, pick up and as you please kind of way. So
that's great, because also then it leads them on to other things they might enjoy or they might like. And because it's sort of bite-sized, I think a lot of people are put off, aren't they, when the first time they hear something. I mean, I think the first opera I ever heard was a performance at Opera North of Gloriana, and I found it quite hard, and it did put me off. I was really quite young then. It was part of a sort of orchestral trip, and I thought, gosh, didn't like that. And I think it put me off. It's great that even if something is not quite for you, they know that there is just a wealth of other music outside. Kate Willoughby, who I've just met, says, did you see this? It's about open air performance, social distance. They've been given the go ahead from the 11th of July. So that's good for people who can perform outside, obviously. hope, fingers crossed, in the weather.
Yes, the trouble is that's not inside, and it's the inside bit that's troubling everybody. It's like Glyndebourne, for instance, are going to do outdoor concerts, but the sad thing is that doesn't allow the likes of West End theatres or opera houses to open. And at the moment, all that's permitted is that you are allowed to record for broadcast in a socially distanced manner within a building, but we're not allowed audiences in.
Yeah, it's so different. I have a concert in a week tomorrow, actually, in St. Luke's, and that will be streamed live, but it will feel very weird without having any audience. I've never really done something like that before, without that kind of atmosphere. I mean, I'll be glad to just play music, obviously.
Oh, sure.
You know, to actually play duos rather than myself, just practicing at home. But, you know, we need to be able to play indoors, and we need to be able to employ the people who, you know, work behind the scenes with all that. And yes, Kate is an actor and a writer, so she knows exactly what we mean by, you know, it's not just about that actual moment of content or that stage. It's all the people.
It's the connections that you have with the audience. Yeah.
So we've got about 4 minutes left. So if anyone else has a question for Jen, do pop it into the comments. So this is going to take you obviously right into September. Do you have a sort of last night of the proms idea, like something like that?
We've got a few thoughts that are going to probably change depending on what happens in the next few months. But it might be that we just wave goodbye, but if the last night of the proms is on the TV, clearly everybody needs to watch that. But I think the likelihood is that we'll use last night to celebrate the proms, because you can't kind of replace it. I mean, it's the joy of having that happening. But also, one of my really good friends is the soloist for the last night of the proms, Golda Schultz, the South African soprano. I'm so proud of her, and I'm so excited to watch. So I will want to be watching myself. So we'll think about it. I think, you know, as I say, it's not that it's a movable feast, it's that we've got lessons to learn, and also we want it to be as enjoyable as possible for everybody. So
yeah, definitely. And I think just, you know, already being out, you know, if you can take this all the way up to the moment that the proms hope they can start, then, you know, that's still a really large.
Well, I mean, judging from how many people want to be involved, we won't have any trouble filling 8 weeks. It's more about guiding it so that we don't lose track of or sight of why we're doing it. And I think once the live concerts at the proms start, it would be brilliant to tie in with whatever they're doing. The trouble is they don't know what repertoire they're doing at the moment. So and you won't know, because I know the LSO are going to be doing a prom, but because we simply don't know, that's why it's got to be guided. Because clearly if let's say the LSO were doing a Beethoven concert, it would be ideal to have a Beethoven clip that day and then do a Beethoven podcast, because clearly it's the Beethoven year. So, you know, that's the sort of the way we're thinking. And so I think just watch this space.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jen, so much.
Thank you.
Tell people to go, you know, look on Notes for Music, Notes Musicians Kitchen.
Notes from musicianskitchens.com to subscribe.
Yeah, and also Bitesize Proms. And if you want to get involved or donate, please, please, please.
Yeah, there's a fundraising page which we set up for the Bitesize Proms, which is on Just Giving. The thing is, it is active right now. We just will have to keep on reminding people that why we're doing all of this, and it is to help Musicians UK. So anybody that's got cash, nobody's going to have cash to spare, but if you can take pity on the fact that our profession is in a pretty sorry state right now because of what's happened, please give us your money.
Well, thank you, Jen. That was just a really fascinating talk, and well done.
Thank you for having me.
Done. No, you're welcome. I'm so.
It's lovely to see you.
We're wearing silly hats today.
I know, for once. Yeah.
Being the quiz with Karen, but I think, you know, you've really thought outside the box and managed to get a whole load of things going. So well done to you.
Thank you.
Good luck with it all. And
thank you, you too.
Bite-sized props when they come out. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.